analysis behind the news. Let's talk a little bit about Agenda 21. When we got involved as an organization about 3 years ago, a lot of our members were already involved, but we gave organization to the movement, and that's what helped really spur the interest in Agenda 21. It's our more or less hidden organization. I mean, it's not secret, it's there. It's just that we don't draw attention to ourselves organizationally quite often. And so a lot of people don't realize the organization that's involved. They see the individual here and there, but not how it is all tied together. That gave great impetus to the anti-Agenda 21 movement. And a lot of people have not exactly thought that we were telling the truth about certain things in connection with Agenda 21. Not just us, but others that are in the leadership of Agenda 21. Now, one of the things that they did, what they want to do with Agenda 21, is to get everybody out of the country and into cities and living in apartments, just like they do in Amsterdam or other European cities. The stores are in the bottom on the street level, and then everybody lives up in the apartments above. So you'll have restaurants, you'll have department stores, not necessarily department stores, but pharmacists and other shops in the ground floors, and then everybody living up in apartments. And as soon as you hit the edge of town, that's all country, pretty much. Farms, that kind of thing, manufactured forests, so on and so forth. That is what they want to do in the United States. Now, we say that this is a socialist agenda. Now, some people say, well, wait a minute, Karl Marx didn't believe in that. He said as one of the 10 points for communizing a country was to develop the rural areas. Well, that was true in 1848 because a lot of this was aimed at the United States, which was still primarily a wilderness beyond the eastern side of the Mississippi. And so they wanted to gain control over the advancement and development of these rural areas, these new territories, these wilderness, the frontier, so to speak, by the federal government. And so they advocated that then. Today, now that it's developed, they want to do the reverse. Now that they've got control of the rural areas, the national forests, the national parks, the various things through ecology and everything else relative to the farms and so on and so forth, the rivers, the mining and on, ad nauseum actually. Now they want to get the population to where they can control them better back into the cities. We'll leave enough out there to take care of all this rural area, but now the bulk of the population we want into multi-level occupancy, apartments, triplexes, and so on and so forth. One of the areas where this just cropped up and is very, very interesting is Seattle. Now, just recently, the Housing Commission in Seattle made a recommendation to the City Council. And that recommendation was this, that they have only zoning for multi-family residences. In other words, nobody can build and own any longer a single-family home. Now, this vote by this commission was 19-3. Now, whether or not the City Council will do this will depend on a number of factors. One main factor is that if nobody raises enough opposition to what's going on, to stop it. And you got to understand about the city of Seattle. I grew up there. I know it very well. And I know the communist level of influence that exists there. It is tremendous, particularly among the community action organizations, the Saul Alinsky-esque type of organizations. They at one time in the 50s and 60s, they were almost all controlled by the communists, or at least the Socialist Party, to the detriment of the citizens of Seattle. And of course, you've got a lot of universities in Seattle that has its influence out into the community by these, what we used to call eggheads, but by communist professors and so on and so forth, particularly the University of Washington. So in these community action groups that come together and form these commissions, there are a lot of socialists that find their way in there. Today, I don't know what the situation is, particularly by name. because we no longer have the ability to ferret out who are the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, the Freedom Socialist Party, ad infinitum number of socialist units and parties in the city of Seattle, who they are. We used to have that capability. The Seattle Police Intelligence Squad used to do that because of the terrorism that it used to occur. Seattle has always had a problem with communist terrorists since 1900s, with the Wobblies, the IWW, the International Workers of the World, that sort of thing, trying to blow up the mayor's office, occupying cities like Everett, to where the sheriff had to come and reoccupy the city with armed forces. Now, you don't see that in your history books any longer, but that used to be well known. It's the only place that I know of where the American Legion and the Communist Party had house-to-house combat in the city of Centralia at one time in the 1920s. So these sorts of things have gone on there for a long time. A lot of communist-controlled unions in the city of Seattle. We used to have the House Committee on Un-American Activities. We used to have the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee looking into who are these communists who've taken an oath of allegiance to the communists and Russia, to Moscow, and are working in the political system. So we knew who those people were, and we could follow them and trace them and their activities throughout all this social structure, whether it was Seattle or Cincinnati or New York or where it happened to be. We don't have that capability anymore. So I can't definitely say, yes, this is a communist. But I can say, yes, this person or this committee is following the Communist Party line. And you get a lot of that in these community action organizations. So it's not surprising to see that such a commission would recommend that we no longer zone the city of Seattle anywhere for single-family residents. There's got to be apartment houses and that sort of thing. Then over attrition, over time, those single-family dwellings will disappear. Because if it's no longer zoned for single families, then how do you remodel? How do you refurbish, et cetera, et cetera? You don't get housing permits and building permits to do those sorts of things. So in the long run, single-family dwellings would disappear. At any rate, that's just one level of what's going on in changing our cities into what they have in Europe so they can control the population better, because they really don't own anything. They live and rent in various places around the city. It's a problem. America was built really on single-family dwellings. Another thing that I think I'll leave the rest of it for next week, because I want to talk to you about some of the things that are happening in the economy. But something that I just noticed in this morning's Wall Street Journal, I'll just draw this one thing out to your attention. And it's an article, after 5 years, Dodd-Frank is a failure. And it's a very interesting column. You might go there to the Wall Street Journal and read this opinion column by Congressman Jeb Hesselring of Texas. I don't know, he's a Republican. I don't know where he is on the Freedom Index. I gather he's a little bit on the conservative side, but not way up as a conservative. But it's interesting, some of the things that he says in here. I'll just quote one thing. And that is, he says that government figures indicate the country is losing an average of one community bank or credit union a day. That's the same level that we saw in 2008. With banks all over the country. We lost about 400, 500 banks in 1 year, and the next year was pretty close to that. Well, if that's the national average, a community bank or a credit union, one a day, that's over 350 a year. That's an awful lot. And he attributes it to Dodd-Frank. And by the way, we're talking about Barney Frank, the member of the Socialist International, helped write this bill on regulating the banks. We'll talk a little bit more about this next week, because I think that this is very interesting and something you really need to understand about what's evolving within our banking system and why all those costs that you see on your checking account and everything else are going up. It's a result of this particular act. It's another one of those that we don't know how it's going to work until we pass it, sort of a thing. And I'll read you a quote on that. Until then, we'll see you next week.